welcome to Trucking with OOIDA. I'm Scott Thompson.
And I'm Ashley Blackford.
You know, Ashley, we talked about this before. Last month, I was at the Guilty by Association truck show in Joplin, Missouri. There was a Q&A session that FMCSA and OOIDA hosted, something we reported on at the time. And you may recall, this is not really a surprise to anybody, that English proficiency and the issuance of non-domiciled CDLs was far and away the hottest topic discussed at that session. It, of course, again, no surprise here, remains a very hot topic. We do have a series of bills now in Congress dedicated to both of those issues, I might add, that OOIDA has been leading discussions on. We've talked about that as well. But we are hopefully, at least in the eyes of OOIDA, just getting started on all this. OOIDA now calling on both chambers of Congress to take these safety issues one step further. And joining us to discuss is Collin Long of OOIDA's Washington, D.C. office. Collin, how's it going? Have you solved the shutdown yet?
Not quite. But
got your top people on it?
The good news is, well, the Department of Transportation, by and large, continues with business as usual because they're conveniently funded through the Highway Trust Fund. So work through FMCSA, FHWA continues here in Washington. So we've remained busy, but a lot of these things we're going to talk about today are on Capitol Hill. And as you know, not much is happening on Capitol Hill right now. There's a flurry of bills being introduced. It's hard to keep track of them, if I'm being totally honest, because everyone seems to have their version. But once Congress returns, we expect some of these things to work their way through the legislative process.
Well, I suppose that's a good place to start, really, because there is one bill that I guess we could say kind of stands out from the rest. It was introduced by Representative David Rouser of North Carolina. This is related to the issuance of non-domiciled CDLs. We do have an interim final rule on this, but again,
we do.
This is going to take kind of a concerted effort by everybody to get this across the line. Can we talk about this bill by Representative Rouser and what it would do?
Yeah, so Representative Rouser, first off, is chair of the House Transportation and Infrastructure Committee's Subcommittee on Highways and Transit. So he is a leader on highway and trucking issues in the House of Representatives. We are thrilled to be working with him on this bill. If you liked the Trump interim final rule that basically put a clamp on non-domiciled CDLs, you're going to like the Rouser bill because it's the next logic step in the process of basically ending non-domiciled CDLs being issued to foreign nationals. And I say that because, you know, the Trump interim final rule, in theory, could only remain in place during the Trump administration. A new administration could come in and reverse the good work they've done on non-domiciled CDLs. So the importance of Chairman Rouser's bill is that it would make that interim final rule permanent, so it couldn't be unraveled in the future. And we think that's an important step. And we want to remind folks that the Trump interim final rule and the Rouser bill, which mirrors it, basically takes care of the long-haul industry. There's not going to be foreign nationals getting their CDLs for getting their non-domiciled CDLs in states to compete with our members in the long-haul industry. And I think that is an important thing to consider when we talk about the Trump interim final rule and the Rouser bill, because there's been some confusion on this. But if your concern is about these non-domiciled CDL holders working in long-haul trucking, that's not going to happen anymore with the Trump interim final rule for the next at least couple of years while the Trump administration is in place. And if the Rouser bill is signed into law, it's unlikely to ever happen again. So that's why we are supporting the final rule that the Trump administration and Secretary Duffy put out, and that's why we are supporting Chairman Rouser's bill, which complements it and makes it permanent.
Yeah, this reminds me a little bit of the speed limiter topic, in that, you know, we saw a few months ago, again at the urging of OOIDA, to do away with that proposed mandate. But again, the same thing you're talking about here. That doesn't mean that a future administration couldn't bring that rule back. Just the same thing with this non-domiciled CDL issue as well. And I know you worked with Representative Rouser's office kind of helping to craft this bill. Is that right? Or how did you kind of get this ball moving with them?
I mean, to be honest, there's not much crafting. It puts into legislative text the Trump interim final rule. And I think that's that's what we really like about this process, is that the Trump team under Secretary Duffy's leadership and their go-to guys on Capitol Hill, in this case, Chairman Rouser of the Highways and Transit Subcommittee, are working together on this issue. And they are very happy to have OOIDA support, if I do say so myself, because they appreciate the fact that we were raising the red flag about this months ago in our Vice President Louis Pugh's testimony before both the House and the Senate. And if you remember that deadly crash in Florida, when that happened, we sent letters out to all the states who were issuing non-domiciled CDLs and encouraged their governors to put an end to those programs. So we are very thrilled to be working with Chairman Rouser and the Trump administration on this effort, because they are working together behind the scenes as well, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
Now, I know one of the things that we say, all the time is that this is all about safety for OOIDA.
Yeah.
And well, things have moved swiftly in recent months on things like English language proficiency and non-domiciled CDLs. You sent a letter to the Transportation Committee leaders in both chambers of Congress calling for more changes. I want to get to those 5 recommendations in a minute, but I guess in a nutshell, if you can say, you're asking for Congress to clamp down on training and licensing standards, right?
Yeah, I think we have a good window of opportunity with the focus on Capitol Hill being so honed on English language proficiency, non-domiciled CDLs, that we see an opportunity to start enhancing training requirements and start fighting back against folks who want to unnecessarily or haphazardly streamline credentialing, or folks who unnecessarily want to bring 18, 19, 20-year-olds into the long-haul industry. There's a number of things that this can of worms has kind of opened beyond just English language proficiency and non-domiciled CDL. So we see this as a bite at the apple of doing things like requiring mandatory behind-the-wheel training for folks who are entering the industry as a new driver. We see this as a great opportunity to reinforce what we believe is paramount to safety, which is making sure that the new entrant for motor carriers is more rigid than it has been, and audits are happening in a way that makes sure there's not chameleon carriers getting into our industry. There's a number of things that we can go through because we've, obviously, like you said, outlined them in this letter, but we really think there's an opportunity to go further in training requirements and solidify credentialing as well, because folks are really starting to pay attention to how CDLs are distributed amongst new candidate drivers throughout the country.
That's a great point. And again, like Ashley said, we want to talk about those recommendations real quick. But to that point, it is interesting because you do have an attention on this right now that you haven't really necessarily had in the past. Exactly. That's what I was going to say. So it must feel like you've got the winds at your back right now in terms of the focus.
A bit. There's sorry to cut you off. There's still challenges. I mean, there's still partisan divide, unfortunately, on some of these issues. When we talk about younger drivers, I think a lot of Democrats are with us. A lot of Republicans want to see 18, 19, 20-year-olds enter the industry. When we talk about mandatory behind-the-wheel training, I think Republicans are a little bit more reluctant with more intervention in the initial training of candidate drivers. So it's going to take a little bit of finesse on our part to make everyone comfortable with some of the proposals we're floating and some of the things we oppose. But by and large, I mean, I think we have the high ground on these things because our focus is always on safety. If you want to enhance safety, mandatory behind-the-wheel training for new drivers is probably a logical step in the progression of the entry-level driver training requirements. And if you want to enhance safety, I think letting 18, 19, 20-year-olds loose in the long-haul industry is probably not a good way to go about doing it. So, like I said, I think the great opportunity here is to remind everyone that OOIDA's priorities when it comes to training and licensing are always on safety. And now I think we can capitalize on that, hopefully, with both parties.
Yeah. We've kind of hinted at some of the recommendations already. Let's go through them here. And again, the goal the underlying goal here, the idea is to strengthen training, licensing, and qualification protocols for commercial truck drivers. 5 recommendations. Let's take them one by one here. Let's start with these calls, and you kind of alluded to it there, calls to bolster entry-level driver training standards. I think we know the problem here, but I'm going to ask you anyway. Walk us through the problem, and then again, what the possible solution looks like here.
Yeah, the problem actually goes back in time to when the entry-level driver training standards were implemented. It was the first time we really had universal standards for entry-level drivers. And one of the biggest shortcomings of that rulemaking process was the fact there was no mandatory behind-the-wheel benchmarks for new drivers. And, OOIDA pushed very vigorously for that in the negotiated rulemaking process that occurred at the time. Unfortunately, there were 28 committee members. I think 26 of them agreed mandatory behind the wheel was a good step. And by the time the final rule was issued, it was gone. So we are revisiting that issue because, like I said, we think it was one of the biggest deficiencies in the entry-level driver training rules that were put in place a few years ago. So we're going to have good support for that. I mean, safety advocacy groups are right there with us on that one. Training schools, a lot of them already require 30 hours, which is what we're asking for. That's kind of a bare minimum. We'd like to go higher, but I think 30 is what we see as the next logical progression in entry-level driver training.
And that's something Congress rejected, the 30 hours of behind-the-wheel training before, right?
Well, it wasn't included in the final product of the negotiated rulemaking, so we didn't really have an opportunity for Congress to say, hey, guys, go back and do that because it was a good idea. So that's what we hope to do now. We hope to have legislation that would require 30 hours behind the wheel. I think we'll have that pretty soon once Congress reconvenes after this shutdown. But entry-level driver training, frankly, we think it goes beyond just 30 hours. And this is where we bring back English language proficiency. I think there's a lot of folks on Capitol Hill who want to make sure that drivers who are being trained are capable of reading and communicating in English. And I think that's something we certainly support. We've supported legislation by Senator Roger Marshall over in the upper chamber that would require that testing be done at the training level. I think there's 2 ways to kind of skin the cat on English language proficiency. One is the roadside, but that doesn't mean because there's an executive order that requires English language proficiency violations to become out of service violations. But that doesn't necessarily mean that we're making sure that drivers who are entering the industry for the first time are proficient in English, and that's what the Marshall Bill would do. So I kind of see training as kind of a 2-pronged approach here: 1, mandatory behind the wheel hours, and 2, proficiency in English demonstrated before the license is even granted.
And again, it just strikes me when you talk about it, how all these things are lumped together. And again, the idea of putting these things before Congress and proposing them right now, I think is an incredibly smart move just because everybody's thinking about it right now.
Absolutely.
Something else that people, and we've been talking about this for months or even years now as well, are these bad actors that are out there, especially in the training registry. That is actually the second recommendation that you've put forth here, calling on FMCSA to better utilize the training provider registry to remove those bad actors. A little bit of history here. FMCSA's training provider registry was created a few years ago, and I think the intentions for that were probably right, in the right place. Implementation, I think it's safe to say, has fallen pretty short.
Yeah, this was also a part of the ELDT rule, and we liked it because we thought finally we'll be able to identify trainers who aren't up to snuff. I mean, if we see repeat violations and potentially repeat crashes all coming from drivers who were trained at the same location, in theory, FMCSA should go out and address that problem or potentially even revoke the trainer's certification to provide that type of training. And unfortunately, I think there was a bit of a backlog. I think states were identifying trainers that they had concerns with, but the federal government wasn't following through. Now that's happening, but we think they need to go further. And frankly, monitoring the training provider registry closely and looking for potential concerns and taking steps to mitigate those concerns has to be something that the agency prioritizes moving forward, because we think it's going to be a very successful way of cracking down on trainers that, like I said, just aren't up to stuff.
Has there not been an appetite for doing this in the past? I mean, when you say it sounds like such common sense, but we're not seeing it, right?
Yeah, and I think even some of the training schools who are doing things right want to see this, because they know that there are other training schools who are frankly bringing them down for their poor performance. And I mean, we see that in trucking too. I mean, the lowest common denominator is often the one who is cast as the symbol of the industry. And unfortunately, I think it's the case with training providers as well. So we've seen some support from other training schools who want to see the system work more efficiently in addressing bad actors and potentially even removing bad actors so they're not able to keep working. And that's good for us. Whenever we can have other folks in the industry singing from the same hymnal as us, it really gets noticed on Capitol Hill, and I think this is a great example. If I'm being honest, the training schools have been leading this charge. We're more of the chorus here than we are the featured singer.
Yeah.
Let's take a look at the third recommendation, strengthening new entrant audit requirements. What's the idea here?
Yeah, if you've been listening to Louis testify before the House and the Senate, he talks about how the bars of entry for new entrants are just too low, and I think this gets into a bit of chameleon carrier issues too, which we'll have some more talking points about coming up in the near future. That's a little sneak peek, but by and large, I think we believe the new entrant system needs to be enhanced to ensure motor carriers that are entering the industry are going to be safe and are going to remain in place for a long time to allow their drivers to become safe, experienced drivers.
Yeah, and this is something. I mean, audits, I think, are pretty much completely online right now. Which is a problem because we've got shady entities out there that are manipulating things pretty easily.
Yeah, and I think this one really does target chameleon carriers. And I think everyone knows who they are. Folks who run into problems because their safety record isn't up to par, and they basically disappear one night and reemerge the next day. And we think there's enough clues there for the agency to identify these carriers and potentially give them a little bit more oversight, or potentially not allow them to be granted authority. So we believe that has to be a part of this process to improve safety and improve credentialing. And thankfully, we do have folks on Capitol Hill, and that's kind of the sneak peek I'm getting ahead of myself with right now. But there are folks on Capitol Hill who want to address chameleon carriers, and we're working with them to make sure that gets done.
That's encouraging.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, I'll be back to talk about it, hopefully in the future.
All right. We're not going to get any more out of you. All right. It's like a movie trailer. Fourth recommendation here, eliminating unsafe CDL exemptions and waivers. This is something we see these pop up all the time, these exemption requests, these waivers that are issued by FMCSA and others. We've seen this a lot in recent years, rules being relaxed, and you are calling for that to go away. Yeah, I mean,
one of the big problems we face with all of these issues is that there are large carriers out there who want a ready supply of the cheapest labor possible, and they want it timely. And as a result, they want exemptions, they want waivers to credentialing and licensing that we certainly oppose. And I think one of the examples of what we oppose that drives me crazy all the time is that folks want to have the trainer who is training a permit holder not be required to sit in the passenger seat while that permit holder is operating the vehicle. That blows my mind. I mean, what is the point of a trainer if they're not even engaged in the operation of the vehicle?
They're there in spirit, Collin.
That's kind of the poster boy of these exemptions and waivers that we oppose, and we just think it's insane that there are folks who have the boldness to even ask for this type of exemption. And frankly, I think our arguments against them have been strengthened recently as folks on Capitol Hill and in the administration take a closer look about what's going on with licensing, because this is one of those where we shouldn't have to have this fight. We shouldn't have to say, yes, a trainer should be required to be in the passenger seat while a trainee is operating the vehicle. It just goes without saying.
Last, but of course certainly not least, OOIDA wants more oversight and accountability for third-party CDL testing providers. This is a big one.
It is. And, we've always been kind of cautious about third-party testers. A lot of folks want to enhance their role in licensing, and we certainly don't. I mean, in fairness, I'm sure there are some who are doing it right. But our concerns are about those who have demonstrated that they aren't necessarily doing it right. So I think just a little bit more oversight of these third-party trainers and testers, making sure they are meeting standards, making sure they aren't producing unsafe drivers. And there's enough data and enough oversight to be able to make those determinations. So we think, third parties, we've always been cautious. Let's just exert a little bit more oversight of them to make sure that they are also up to snuff.
Let's put these all together here, Collin.
Yeah.
We're talking about your perfect world, right? Congress takes you up on all these recommendations. We've got more oversight of third-party testing providers. We've got stricter entry-level driver training standards, more behind-the-wheel training. We're removing bad actors, so on and so forth. All the recommendations are taken up. Talk about the effect on the industry, again, if these 5 things were to fall in place and actually be done.
Well, we think it would have more safety value than a lot of the proposed safety policies that have been floating around Washington, D.C. for years. I mean, look at things like speed limiters. They're going to take safety in the wrong direction. And I think having the previous administration and Capitol Hill focusing on speed limiters for so long was a waste of time, because in the same time, they didn't address things like English language proficiency. They didn't better understand why so many non-domiciled CDLs were being released. It's just this constant distraction of whatever is being proposed as a silver bullet to safety that unfortunately distracts folks both in the regulatory world and the legislative world enough that they lose sight of the more simplistic solutions. And often those solutions are the ones that the real highway safety experts are putting forward, and those are truck drivers. Those are organizations like OOIDA, where our members make their living behind the wheel and share what they're experiencing on the roads with us. And it's frustrating because, we still have to fight against things like speed limiters. We still have to fight against things that don't make sense, like side underride guards. And in the meantime, we struggle to get folks to focus on things like 30 hours mandatory behind the wheel training. And it's a real frustration. But like I said, I think conditions are changing. Folks on Capitol Hill are taking a closer look at how folks are acquiring their CDLs and what can be done to improve safety from that perspective. And we welcome it because we've been asking for that for a while.
Yeah. And this letter, really is the first step. And again, you talk about the environment being ripe for this discussion and maybe taking action, hopefully, on these things. But
God, I'm going to take umbrage with that. It's not a first step. We've taken many, many steps on this. I think it may not be a first step, but it is an important step.
Sure.
And it's one that we hope will increase awareness of all of these factors that play a role in highway safety. And it's timely because, like I said, we've been trying to take these steps for years. Now we have a window of opportunity to do so, and that's why you see this letter. And that's why you see this letter going beyond just English language proficiency and non-domiciled CDLs, because we think there's a lot more that can be done and a lot more that should be done. And to your point earlier, you pull a thread here and one loosens up on the opposite side of the sweater. So these are all related to each other, and you can't take a pass on some and assume safety is going to improve overnight. You have to take a much more holistic look at this, and that's why we've included 5 points. And within these 5 points are several different elements. So I think we've given Capitol Hill and the U.S. Department of Transportation a really holistic look at what needs to be done to dramatically improve safety from this perspective.
I'll rephrase. It's the first step in this, I think, new phase or this new environment. We'll put it that way.
It's a brave new world.
There you go. But again, I think this, looking at it as a step, because I think what you're doing is you're laying the groundwork here for an all-out push, again, in this new environment where people are aware of these issues, and you're kind of representing the case, I suppose, if we were to continue with the legal analogy here. But Here's my question too. There are going to be people, and I'm sure you are aware of who they are, who are going to push back against some, if not all of these ideas.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
To me, I look at these things, and again, we're talking, I think, common sense changes here, or common sense, moves that you could make to make the industry safer and more on a level playing field for everybody. What is, and I know you've thought about this, what is the pushback going to be on some of these things? And have you thought about how you're going to push back on that pushback?
Well, the pushback is going to come from the same people who have been talking about a driver shortage that doesn't exist for the last decade. And let's not forget, again, these things are all related. If you want a cheap, readily available supply of labor, you're going to support things like lax enforcement of English language proficiency. You're going to support a non-domiciled CDL program that doesn't require these drivers to go through as much vetting as American drivers. You're going to want 18, 19, 20-year-olds entering the industry because you're not going to pay them as much. I mean, it's going to be the same cast of characters who have built up all of this bad policy, all of this unsafe policy on this BS notion of a driver shortage. And that hasn't, I mean, I don't think there's a lot of folks left in the industry who think there's a driver shortage. Yeah. I don't think U.S. DOT even believes there's a driver shortage because they've kind of implied that when taking questions about cracking down on non-domiciled CDL. Mm-hmm. So there's just kind of one portion of the industry, one group here in Washington left who is still trying to sell this driver shortage myth because it is the foundation on which all of their bad policies for cheap, timely labor are built. And this should come as no surprise to our listeners because these are the same folks who don't want to pay you. Mm-hmm. They don't want to make sure you're not wasting many hours at the loading dock waiting to be loaded or unloaded. If you're a small business trucker, they don't mind if your insurance rates go up because they always want to improve their own bottom line. And in this case, the problem with that is that it is having a real impact on safety on our highways because they wanted the lax rules on English language proficiency. They wanted easier CDL acquisition for non-domiciled drivers. They want 18-year-olds crisscrossing the country behind 80,000-pound trucks when they just learned to drive a car a couple months ago. Those are the type of folks who are going to continue to push for all of these bad policies. But I think we might have the upper hand now, which is a welcome change. I don't want to get ahead of myself, mm-hmm. but, I think we've been really demonstrating to folks across the street at US DOT and up on Capitol Hill that they need to start prioritizing the opinions, the experience of drivers. And drivers are telling them, here's how you go about doing it.
Yeah.
Who's leading this conversation, this fight on Capitol Hill in terms of lawmakers?
It's funny because it's bringing out a lot of folks who don't necessarily have a big track record on trucking, but then there's also a lot of our kind of go-to champions on the Hill. Cynthia Lummis is on board with English language proficiency. She's been helping us with truck parking for years. There's a guy named David Taylor, a new member of Congress who's on the Transportation and Infrastructure Committee who's helping us with English language proficiency in the House. We supported a bill that was introduced by Senator Tom Cotton of Arkansas, who, I think a lot of our members know you hear Arkansas, you get a little concerned about what's coming out of that state because of big trucking's role in it. But here we have Tom Cotton coming out with a bill that would say if you just got your standard driver's license, you need to wait a year before you get a CDL. That's a big accomplishment for us. So it's an ever-changing cast of characters. It's some names that I think a lot of folks will recognize. It's some names that are going to be new to people. But the fact of the matter is everyone on Capitol Hill is now paying attention to this, and that's why we have so many different bills. But, we've really focused our efforts on the ones we think have the best opportunity to become law and have the best impact on improving safety. And that starts with bills like Congressman Taylor's Connor's Law in the House. Cynthia Lummis has introduced the companion in the Senate. It includes Chairman Rausser's bill to crack down on non-domiciled CDL holders. It includes Senator Cotton's bill as well. So please, as much as you can, keep track of these bills. And I'm laughing as I say it because, we have a hard time keeping track of these bills because there seems to be a new one introduced every day or two here in Washington. But those are the ones that we're really following because we think they have the most immediate impact and the best chance of becoming law.
But that's the thing, right, Collin, in that we are seeing all these bills come out, which again tells you that it is on the radar of these lawmakers. And it's on their radar because they have been hearing about it, not just from the USDOT or FMCSA or even OOIDA, but again, like at that FMCSA Q&A session at GBATS, almost everybody that came up was talking about the non-domiciled CDL issue. They were giving FMCSA credit for, making moves on that and taking action and calling for more things. But again, this gets to the point of if there were a concerted pressure campaign on lawmakers to follow through on all of these recommendations, some of these recommendations, whatever it may be, that's how we get action here. That's how we get something done. And that can't be understated.
No, you're absolutely right. And we've been, I'll beat this dead horse again. I think drivers are their own best advocates. If they pick up the phone and call their lawmakers and talk about these issues, don't be nervous to talk about the issues you know better than anyone. Educate your lawmakers, educate their staff about these topics. That's when we really see breakthroughs. But I will give the Trump administration a lot of credit. They've taken this new approach, well, not new, but I would say enhanced approach to prioritizing truckers in the development of trucking policy. And frankly, we see it outside of trucking, but where the Trump administration goes, Capitol Hill tends to follow. And I think that's what's happening now, and it's opening more doors on Capitol Hill for us because the Trump administration has made it very clear that they want to prioritize truckers and they respect truckers for their experience and their knowledge and their expertise about safety. And really, a lot of these policies we're talking about, if not all these policies we're talking about, all come back to safety. And that's what is paramount. And I think we are demonstrating to not only the U.S. Department of Transportation and Secretary Duffy, but now increasingly Capitol Hill, that you can improve highway safety I shouldn't say pretty easily. I almost fell for that trap. But you can improve highway safety pretty noticeably in a manner that also supports drivers in your community, drivers who are your constituents, drivers who are your voters. For far too long, I think trucking policy has been dominated by the folks who don't necessarily prioritize the men and women behind the wheel. And as a result, we've seen safety go in the wrong direction. So we've been telling folks, both over at the administration and on Capitol Hill, it's a new era in trucking policy. If you listen to the drivers, you can check numerous boxes. You can improve safety, you can reduce driver turnover and enhance recruitment and retention, and you can improve supply chain efficiency. You can kill all these birds with one stone, and the way to do it is to follow OOIDA's lead. Yeah.
Well, the momentum is there, and this is again, I'll beat the dead horse now, but now is the time really to push this because the attention is there. In terms of reaching out to lawmakers, I think we should give the obligatory plug to fightingfortruckers.com. Collin, I'll let you kind of take it from there.
It's your one-stop shop for advocacy. If you like any of these issues I've been talking about and you want to encourage your lawmakers to get on board, visit fightingfortruckers.com, and you can do it in a couple clicks on your phone or on your laptop. I do it every time we send out a call to action. I did it last week. Let my lawmaker know that I support English language proficiency and I support the Rausser bill. It couldn't be easier, and we've worked to improve it to make it so easy that there is no excuse not to participate anymore. So drivers, you can do it from your cell phone. It only takes a matter of seconds, and boom, you've let your lawmaker know where you stand on these issues.
Phone call, email,
very easy.
Carrier pigeon. I'm not sure that's
an
an option on
fightingfortruckers.com. Don't waste, I don't want to say waste your time. I know people love social media, but don't waste your time on social media. The amount of time it takes you to comment on some post that you read, whether it be real or gossip, take the same amount of time to contact your lawmaker because it's going to be much more productive. It may not make you feel great, but it's going to be much more productive in the long term.
Well, it'll make you feel great if you're joined by hundreds or thousands of other people who are, essentially pushing for the same thing you are.
I think it made people feel great when the Trump administration said we're done with the speed limiter rulemaking because 15,000 truckers had commented. So, yeah, you're probably right. There's a cumulative good feeling there.
Yeah, it's about directing the energy in the right direction. And I'm with you're preaching to the choir on social media in terms of screaming into the void there and all the good or bad, I guess it does. But, fighting for truckers,
I don't know if you can tell. We've been talking for, according to my phone, 37 minutes. I think we need to always schedule these conversations when I am halfway through a massive cup of coffee because I could probably go another 10, 15 minutes today.
Yeah. Well, hey, we'll take you up on that next time. You teased the next time when you were talking about the audits and the new entrant audit requirements. So
I will be back and fully caffeinated.
There you go. Get a couple Red Bulls in you and a cup of coffee, and we'll just let you go.
Sounds good.
All right. Hey, Collin, we appreciate it.
Yes.
We'll also expect an update on you ending the shutdown there in Washington, D.C. But until next time, we appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Today's episode of Trucking with OOIDA was brought to you by a dedicated team of people that includes Jim Fetzer, Tennille Flick, and Kim Boren.
You got thoughts? We'd love to hear them. You can call us at 1-800-324-6856 and leave us a message or send us an email at podcast@ooida.com, and we might just include it on the show.